All right, everyone, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off with a few housekeeping items here. If you're still getting situated, we do have two ways to listen in. So on your taskbar, if you hit, I believe it's the little headphones icon or the microphone icon, you'll be able to connect with computer audio, which is the default, or you can select dial in and call in and to join via phone. You will have the option to join to submit a question in the Q&A at any time throughout today's webinar. We will be keeping an eye on that. You can submit anonymously also if you prefer. And we do have some time set aside at the end of the webinar today to answer your questions. And just a reminder, the session is being recorded and will be available on the LRW website after we end. We at LRW, we do have a code of conduct for all of our events, and we expect meeting participants to be considerate and respectful and behave in a way that creates a safe and welcoming environment. A few examples of unacceptable behavior are noted here, and we know that our members and attendees are generally very respectful, but if you do encounter any incidents, please email webinars@railwaywomen.org, and we will make sure that those are addressed. Things like today's webinar could not be possible without our corporate partners, so we would like to thank all of them. I know we do have a few additional corporate partners that was announced in our newsletter yesterday that joined in Q1, so we appreciate them as well. Being a corporate partner is a great benefit for your organization as well. It gives you access to an incredible pool of talent to network with, to recruit from, to experience educational opportunities like today's webinar, and to participate in professional development with. So if you're interested as an organization in becoming a corporate partner, or as an individual in joining as a member, you can visit railwaywomen.org and click on Join LRW on our menu and get more information about membership options. So I'm going to go ahead. We're about to get started. Enough of me, right? And I'm going to introduce our participants today, our panelists. Our first is Dr. Julia Leone from the Short Line Safety Institute. She's the manager of research and organizational development there, and she oversees all research and process improvement efforts for that organization. And she's passionate about transforming data into knowledge and action, which you're going to see today. And her partner in presenting is Samantha Lacey, MS, from the University of Connecticut. She's a PhD candidate in their industrial and organizational psychology program, and she works as a data consultant and in research at the Short Line Safety Institute as well, and specializes in issues related to organizational climate and culture and employee well-being. And then my co-moderator, who you're going to hear from later, is Christine Khalil. She's a superintendent in asset management at the QNSNL and Central Services. And then again, I'm Tiffany Wenrick. I am the marketing director at Holland. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Julia and Samantha to teach us more about gender diversity and safety culture on track.
Okay, thank you so much, Tiffany. So that is our title of our webinar today, All Aboard, Next Stop, Gender Diversity and Safety Culture on Track. I'm again, Julia Leone. I work for the Short Line Safety Institute, which is a nonprofit dedicated to the improvement of safety and safety culture across the United States short line and regional railroads. We're a voluntary, non-punitive program, and all of our offerings are free of charge. We offer things like safety culture assessments, leadership development classes, hazardous materials training, and exercises. So if you have any questions about Short Line Safety Institute, at the end of this presentation, you have my email address. You contact us with any other questions. Samantha, would you like to introduce yourself a little further?
Sure. I'll just say, so I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Connecticut. I do a lot of research related to organizational culture and climate. I've been working with the Short Line Safety Institute for about 4 years now on safety climate, but I've also done it in industries like manufacturing and most recently craft brewing. So fun things ahead.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we have our presentation overview. So first we will discuss gender diversity, which has been identified by the Federal Railroad Association as a workforce challenge. We'll also discuss the benefits of having a gender diverse workforce to individuals, organizations, and society. And we'll move on to safety culture, explain the definition of safety culture and the importance of having safety and safety culture in your workforce. and discuss previous research on safety culture and how their perceptions of safety culture can vary. Then we'll get into our actual research study. We'll discuss our research questions and describe the participants, the procedure, and the results. Then we'll move on to a discussion, which we'll have a discussion on next step opportunities. We'll have a poll for the group so we can have some interaction with our audience. And then we'll also discuss some SLSI resources. And we'll have additional time at the end of the webinar if you have any other questions. And like we mentioned earlier, we have the Q&A chat box. So if you have a question throughout, feel free to type it in and we can address those questions at the end. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so gender diversity, as I said, is identified by the Federal Railroad Association as a workforce challenge. So for women in transportation as a whole, women accounted for 24.1% of all workers employed in transportation in 2020, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. Only other industries with even lower female representation were mining and construction. And within the transportation industry itself, rail had the least female representation, with women accounting for only 7.4% of all workers. Now, specifically, gender breakdowns in rail by job type. Only 3.8% of locomotive engineers and operators identified as female in 2021, according to the BLS data. And gender breakdowns were not available for any other job types, such as railroad conductors, yardmaster, and all other transportation workers. And the gender breakdowns for job type were limited to find in our research, and we'll discuss this later as an avenue for future research. But it was definitely a struggle to find this type of data for women in transportation industry, according to specific job types. And in terms of management, previous research suggests that women are an estimated holding anywhere between 11 to 21% of corporate management and supervisory transit roles. Again, that is a little bit of a limitation as we don't have too much detail on breakdown of what type of those management roles are, but we will discuss that further as well. Next slide, please.
All right. So what are the benefits of increasing gender diversity in general and in the transportation and the rail industry more specifically? So on the previous slide, Julia mentioned women are obviously underrepresented in the rail industry. I think 57% of women are currently participating in the labor force market. So 7.4% participating in rail. Got to get those numbers up. Women today are really highly educated. They are earning the majority of the degrees awarded in higher education today. And with older, more experienced workers starting to exit the workforce, women really present an untapped resource that can be used to fill in these positions. And organizations can't continue to afford ignoring half of their potential workforce. So not only is it practical to increase gender diversity, but now I'm going to explain why it's also good for workers, railroads, and society at large. So for individuals, it's good for their general well-being. Research in male-dominated industries has shown that men and women tend to have poorer mental and physical health outcomes. Women tend to have higher levels of stress. Men have been shown to have a proclivity to return to work sooner after an injury, which poses a major threat for health and safety. Increasing gender diversity in male-dominated organizations, much like those in the rail industry, has been shown to have a positive impact on men and women's occupational well-being. And this is an employee's feeling that they're free from harmful experiences on the job, they're a good fit for their job in the organization that they're currently in, and that they're physically, mentally, and financially well. With such a lack of female representation in rail, increasing gender diversity could be especially impactful and end up being a way to actually attract and retain more female workers. And if you're interested in more generally learning about how workplaces can support workers' mental health and well-being, just as an aside, I highly recommend exploring the US Surgeon General's framework that was recently published in 2022, and I have a graphic on the left-hand side of the screen. In terms of benefits to organizations, research and theory suggest that the demographic characteristics of top management teams in particular can have a significant effect on an organization's financial performance. Outside of the transportation sector, for example, previous research has found that female representation at the top increased return on investment over a 3-year period. Diversity more generally in management teams has also been associated with increases in an organization's innovation revenue. And what was found to be especially essential in this relationship between diversity and innovation performance was that women needed to make up at least 20% of an organization's management team for diversity to actually have an effect on innovation performance. This means that we need a large amount of diverse perspectives, not simply tokenism, for an organization to be able to derive benefits from gender diversity. And with such little gender diversity in the rail industry today and the clear benefits that it has for organizational performance, I would hope that this would motivate organizations to enhance the quality of their recruitment and advancement strategies for female workers. Finally, gender diversity is becoming particularly important for the future of railroads in terms of their environmental and social responsibility. A recent study in the transportation sector actually found that diversity among board members was critical for corporate social responsibility performance. And this is an organization's commitment to eco-friendly practices that can help sustain the economic, environmental, and social well-being of both people and the planet. Similar findings have also been reported in studies with workers from the broader industrial sector, where women have also been traditionally underrepresented. In a study that included supply chain managers and consultants, for example, gender diversity at both managerial and operational levels was found to lead to more socially responsible, eco-friendly, and sustainable decisions. Given the FRA's firm commitment to reducing the transportation sector's emissions, these results support efforts to enhance gender diversity in this industry. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to switch gears a bit. Now we're going to talk about the importance of safety and safety culture. So I think we all know safety and safety culture have been identified as top priorities in the rail industry. A strong organizational safety culture, or the extent to which safety is prioritized over competing goals and demands, like, for example, working quickly, has been linked to decreased accidents, less fatal and non-fatal injuries, fewer days lost at work, less wage and productivity loss, and overall lower costs to organizations. Now, organizational leaders play a really essential role in the development and maintenance of strong safety cultures because they're the ones that create, communicate, and enact the organization's policies, practices, and procedures related to safety. They're basically the ones that are able to ensure that employees feel that they can fully commit themselves to making safety their highest priority and to be able to be dedicated to safety in all aspects of their work. Perceptions of safety culture, however, have been shown to vary both between and oftentimes within organizations. And this brings me to my next slide. So, for example, it's been well established that safety culture perceptions can vary between organizational departments, work groups, hierarchical positions and work environments, and even between people who have and have not experienced a safety-related accident. One factor that's received a lot of attention and has become particularly important for the Short-Line Safety Institute to consider when evaluating safety culture perceptions in short-line and regional railroads is management status. Both in the Short-Line Safety Institute's and other authors' previous research, managers have pretty consistently been found to have higher, more positive perceptions of safety culture than craft employees. These differences in perceptions are generally attributed to differences in managers' and craft employees' daily work demands and experiences. Managers are also just inherently closer to the policies, practices, and procedures related to safety, and that can bias their perceptions. These differences in perceptions are really important for organizations to recognize because if you don't deal with them, they can end up leading to unmet expectations and miscommunications. And this is an issue that could only potentially get worse with a new, more diverse labor force entering the industry. And that brings me to another factor that may affect safety culture perceptions, which is gender. So research on gender is a lot more limited than the research that's available on management status. Much of the work has been conducted outside of the United States and not within the rail industry. With other safety critical industries like manufacturing, though, women have been found to have more positive perceptions of workplace safety, more compliant with safety management procedures, and were involved in fewer accidents than men. They were also more likely to have more positive perceptions of their organization's general commitment to safety and to personally prioritizing safety and caution. These studies point out, though, that these findings could be the result of gender differences in the types of jobs and specific job attributes that men and women tend to pursue and are assigned to. For example, maybe less physically demanding roles with fewer workplace hazards. They also cited previous research that established that women tend to be more risk averse than men, meaning they tend to judge situations as more unsafe, better grasp the severity of negative outcomes, and then actively try to avoid them. Given that that work is so limited and none has been conducted in the rail industry, we thought it would be important to explore it in our study. In addition to a factor like management status that's known to affect people's safety culture perceptions. Better understanding these factors is important because then we can be better prepared to help organizations build and maintain strong safety cultures, especially in the face of an increasingly diverse future workforce. I'm now going to hand it over to Julia to explain our current research study.
Okay, thanks so much, Sam. So our current research study, which will be published in the Transportation Research Record in the next coming months, it's currently in the process of being reviewed by the TRR, but it will be published in the next few months, so keep an eye out. But our current research study has 4 research questions. 1, what does gender diversity generally look like in the US rail industry? What differences, if any, are there in railroad worker demographic characteristics by gender? Number 3, do safety culture perceptions vary by management status or by gender? And lastly, does the effect of a worker's gender on their perceptions of their organization's safety culture depend whether or not they are a manager or a craft employee? So our participants were 1,239 workers from 23 United States short line and regional railroads with rosters of at least 25 or more employees. They were surveyed between May 2016 and June 2018. This is part of a larger project of Shortline Safety Institute's Safety Culture Assessment. So the demographics of our sample, we had 814 craft employees. The craft include maintenance of way, training out an engine, mechanical, and admin. And 425 of our sample were identified as managers. 68% of the sample was employed at larger organizations, which means there's at least 100 or more employees. The average age was 42 years. The most common level of education was some college or technical vocational training. 80% of the sample was white or European descent. The average job tenure was 7 years, while the average organizational tenure of working at that railroad was 10 years, and their average railroad industry tenure was about 13 years. Next slide, please.
So what does gender diversity look like in the US rail industry? So in our sample of over 1,200 workers in 20 plus short-line and regional railroads, we found that only 126 or 10% of our participants were female, making 90% of our sample male. When we looked at gender breakdowns for craft and management employees, we found that 8% of craft employees identified as female, 92% identified as male. And then for management employees, we found that 15% identified as female and 85% identified as male. Even more shocking, we found that 6 of the 23 railroads actually had no self-reported female craft employees, and 9 of the 23 had no self-reported female management employees. So our sample was not very diverse, gender diverse. A limitation of our study, I should mention, though, is that these data were self-reported, and it's our thought that some women may not have felt comfortable self-identifying themselves as females, potentially because they might be the only one at their organization and wouldn't want to then be identifiable. But we'll touch more on that a little bit later. We'll go to the next slide, please. So our next question was, what differences, if any, are there in railroad worker demographic characteristics by gender? So first, no significant differences were observed between men and women in terms of their race, how long they've been employed in their current job, and how long they've been employed in their current organization. Compared to men in our sample, though, women tended to be slightly older, have more education. If you look at the table, you can see that 35% of women in our sample held a 4-year college degree compared to only 17% of men. They were also more likely to be employed at larger organizations with over 100 employees. And this points out to us that maybe gender diversity is even a potentially a larger issue in smaller railroads. Finally, despite being employed in the railroad industry for fewer years than men, women were more likely to be managers. We should keep in mind here, though, again, that women only accounted for 15% of management, and 9 of the 23 railroads had no self-reported female managers. Next slide, please. Next, we looked at whether or not safety culture perceptions varied by management status and gender. For management status, we found that yes, managers and craft employees differed in their perceptions of safety culture. In line with the previous research I mentioned, managers tended to have higher, more positive perceptions of safety culture than craft employees. This is something that, again, we stress that railroad management should take note of, and it's something that could potentially be addressed in broader railroad management training programs, which Julia will bring up a little bit later. In terms of gender, we actually found no. Men and women did not differ in their safety culture perceptions, which is counter to some of the research, the previous but limited research from other safety critical industries. In our study, we found that men and women tended to actually have similar safety culture perceptions. That is, however, until we looked at how a person's management status and their gender interacted to affect their safety culture perceptions. And that brings me to my next slide. So, in other words, does the effect of a worker's gender on their perceptions of their organization's safety culture depend on whether or not they are a manager or a craft employee? And the answer to this question was yes. We uncovered that male and female craft employees differed in their average safety culture perceptions, while male and female management employees did not. Male and female management employees actually had similar safety culture perceptions. Given management employees' inherent closeness with the policies, practices, and procedures around safety, this wasn't incredibly surprising. But when we looked at male and female craft employees, we found that female craft employees tended to have higher, more positive perceptions of safety culture than male craft employees. I will mention here that the safety culture survey that we use in this study actually assesses 9 different aspects of safety culture. So this was great because it allowed us to then look closer into the specific safety culture dimensions or factors that might be driving these differences. So in a supplementary analysis, we ended up finding that we found differences on 2 particular safety culture dimensions. Specifically, compared to male craft employees, female craft employees had higher, more positive perceptions of their railroad's commitment to continuous improvement, and they were more likely to report engaging in fewer risk-taking behaviors. This aligns with previous research I mentioned, which suggested that women tend to be more sensitive to safety issues and more risk-averse than men. Like other research on this topic from other safety-critical industries, I think it's important to acknowledge that we don't have survey data about the types of jobs and management levels that people worked in. Having this kind of data would not only help better explain our findings from this study, but would also help tailor future recruiting efforts. If, for example, male and female craft employees systematically tend to perform different types of jobs. So maybe if women tend to be employed in support administrative roles and men are more likely to perform more of the boots on the ground operational roles where safety culture is more relevant, this could then help explain why female craft employees in our sample tended to have those higher, more positive perceptions of safety culture than male craft employees. It could also point to a need, though, for increased gender diversity, not only within railroads, but also within particular job types and management levels. Ensuring female representation in all job types and all management levels is really important for showing that the railroad is a career destination for women, as well as helping women visualize their own advancement within the industry. With that said, we hope to be able to take job types and management levels into account in the future, as well as to consider other questions like how increasing gender diversity within a male-dominated work environment affects organizational safety culture and its safety-related outcomes. For example, what's the effect of adding one or multiple women to a male-dominated craft employee or management team? How do these changes affect safety and safety culture, both within the team and within the organization? Answers to these kinds of questions are going to help us better prepare the industry to diversify its workforce and maintain positive safety cultures in the meantime. Next slide, please. So limitations of our study aside, management and senior leadership should be cognizant that perceptions of safety culture can differ. In our study, we showed that management and craft employees and male and female craft employees differed in their safety culture perceptions, with managers having higher, more positive perceptions than craft employees, and male and female craft employees having higher, more positive perceptions than male craft employees. We also were able to provide you with a snapshot of the U.S. short line and regional railroad industry's current workforce demography and demonstrated that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of female representation. We stress that continued research and data collection focused on women and gender issues it's going to help keep safety, gender diversity, and equality at the forefront of the railroad industry. I'm now going to hand it over to Julia to talk a little bit more about practical next step opportunities.
Okay, so yes, thank you, Samantha. We have our next step opportunities as inspired by the results of our study. So first, as we mentioned, an increase in data collection and availability. We can have human resource data based on gender, demographics, and like we said, there's quite limited information on the gender makeups of our sample and of the industry. So having that data transparency within HR, being able to obtain that data in one way or another, or having it just more readily available for research purposes. We can also have a broader sample. So this sample of our study was just within regional and short line railroads within the US. But broader samples such as Class 1 railroads, even aviation and trucking, we can get a broader snapshot of what we're looking at here in terms of gender diversity in these industries. And this can create a benchmark for future demographic comparisons. So at this moment, we have our data between 2016 and 2018. We look forward to having access to more data in the future and promoting this idea within the industry that it is important to track and collect this type of gender and demographic data so we can make future comparisons and hopefully show an increase of gender diversity in the future. Next slide, next click, please. Okay. And then we also stress the importance of increased job-specific data. So like we mentioned throughout this webinar, it's important to learn specifically what roles women occupy within the rail industry. This would have a lot of different effects on the results of our study. For example, we can have more detail in the future of what really are we looking at women in the rail industry. And in the future, this could inform recruitment and pipeline efforts and also show the rail industry as a career destination for women. No, people need to see role models and visualization of people who look like them in different job types. So with this information and having more specific information in the future, this can help promote, like I said, recruiting, women visualizing themselves in different job roles within the rail industry to promote that gender diversity across the board in craft, management, and beyond. Next slide, please. And lastly, as we briefly mentioned, management training could be a helpful next step opportunity informed by the results of our study. So it's important that management can be cognizant of the fact that perceptions of safety culture can differ according to male and female craft employees or differences within their audience. So it's important that when you are conveying a safety message, it's possible that different people are hearing different things for a variety of factors. But so a training class could address that issue, that it's important to make sure you drive home your safety messages in different ways for different audiences or in just different formats, to the point that everyone will be on the same page and have a similar perceptions with each other, management and employees together, of the strong safety culture that is prevalent in their railroad. Management training could also help develop effective safety leaders. And they can learn skills such as clear and concise communication, which is important. Just stating a safety message or stating your commitment to safety over competing goals and demands is not enough. It's important that your audience hears you, understands you, and is on the same level as you as well. So management training, which is also offered by Shoreline Safety Institute, we have our 3-day leadership development training, touches on a lot of these different skills, as well as how these skills can apply to our 10 core elements of strong safety culture. So I think a next step opportunity would be to promote some type of management training within railroads more heavily. Next slide, please. Okay. And also just additional resources that are available by the Shoreline Safety Institute. If you were not aware before, we have our safety culture assessment, which is a week-long assessment. We are invited onto your railroad, conduct a week-long assessment, including interviews, observations, document inventory, and facility checks to create an assessment of your safety culture at your railroad and provide a report stating your strengths and opportunities for improvement in the future. We can help you with any of those opportunities as well. We have safety tips available on our website, different videos, hazmat videos, safety videos that you can show to your crew. You can have it on a loop in your crew rooms on some sort of screen. We also have a resource library that has different templates and resources, such as attendee policies, sample discipline policies, job briefing form, job hazard analysis form, safety action plan, you name it. We have a template that can be helpful for you. We also have on-demand webinars that address different topics such as injuries and accidents, drug and alcohol, safety culture assessments in general, safety committees, OSHA overviews. There's a lot of resources available on our website as well, and as well as our research articles. So any of the research produced by SLSI, a lot of it is in collaboration with University of Connecticut. That is available on our website. And like I mentioned before, our current study here, it will be published in the Transportation Research Record, and that will also be available on our website once it's in its official published format. But, and again, we're also leveraging 1,200 plus years of combined experience for the benefit of the shoreline railroad industry. We have a lot of contractors with us for the Shoreline Safety Institute that bring their expertise in both hazmat and safety culture and the rail industry in general to provide help with you and your railroad. Next slide, please. And with that, Samantha and I want to thank you very much for listening. You see we have a few alerts here in the Q&A, so we can speak to those. And below we have our email addresses if you're interested in speaking to either of us further about this presentation or about anything else about our research, Shoreline Safety Institute in general. Thank you very much.
All right, sorry about that, a little technical difficulty. We're gonna head into our Q&A session now. So I see we do have a few very good questions waiting for us. So the first question we have here is, the SLSI only surveys railroads with more than 25 employees. Is there a way to collect the data on gender diversity on the small railroads that are not being surveyed? The SLSI executive director supports this initiative, and I'm sure he would support collecting this info. Next question, I guess that one was more of a comment on that. Next question here for you guys. Does management training make participants aware of the gender disparities?
At this moment, I believe our leadership development training does not specifically highlight the gender disparities that we have, that we've seen here in our results and in previous research as well. But I think that is something that we will be informing them in a next step opportunity for SLSI to include that type of gender disparity in our training. But at this moment, I do not believe it's involved. And I also just realized that I forgot to ask our poll question.
Oh,
I don't know how I skipped that. I'm so sorry. I totally forgot to. I don't know if that's something that you can just introduce, or if we have to go back, or if it's long gone, but it just slipped my mind to ask our poll. Oh, here we go. Okay. So our poll for the audience: would you be willing to self-identify your gender on an anonymous confidential survey that was distributed to your railroad? You can hit yes or no. As we mentioned before, there could be an issue with confidentiality if you are the only woman in your organization. Would you feel comfortable and trusting enough in the process that if you, would your results be easily identifiable as the only female? So we are interested in your comfortability and what you would do in this situation.
And while people are voting, I'm also just going to chime in on that last question about management training, making people aware of gender disparities. I think in general, incorporating like unconscious bias training into those sorts of things is also important. It just mitigates bias in, how you treat employees on the floor. It can even have implications for recruiting people as well. So I'm a proponent of that.
Good. If you want, we can go back. The first comment there was really a question to it. So the question was, can we collect this kind of information from small railroads which were not surveyed?
Oh, got it. Yes, so right now, railroads that are 25 employees or more are the ones that distribute the survey and fill out that information. Railroads that are less than 25 employees, I guess that would have to be obtained directly through HR if they were willing to disclose the demographics of their workforce to us. And that's something that we have not done yet in our research. But oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that can get a little bit sticky with under 25, because even if an organization isn't trying to learn about like what certain employees think about certain topics, if we do say that, oh, one female replied or whatever demographic that we're talking about, that could get a little bit sticky. So we like to stay away from that sort of thing. But for larger research initiatives, it's awesome for research purposes, benchmarking and stuff. We can always take information from all those small railroads together into a larger sort of data set to consider those factors.
So maybe another question that's linked to that. So we had somebody who said that, they would be okay to self-identify, but I guess it depends how much or how the information is disseminated. And within your surveys, are you asking additional questions that those responses would be able to, would be identifiable to their specific railroad?
Well, the importance of our survey, as well as we keep everything extremely confidential. The results of the survey, we would not break down the gender results to the railroad, but that would just be data that we would be collecting for research purposes. But yeah, I think we definitely tried to make sure that the other questions would not be identified at all. And also the responses are not individually delivered to management or senior leadership in any way. We show just aggregate data of what are the total responses, what is the railroad looking like as a whole. We do not break up the individual responses for that reason. So
Right.
Samantha, if you want to speak to a little bit more about that, but we try to obviously protect the identity of our participants and the railroad in general. We don't even refer to the railroad as their name. We give them an acronym. So we really tried to stress confidentiality and anonymous responses.
Yeah. And in our reports back, the only thing that we ever break down in terms of demographics is now we do collect data on the different job types people might be in. So are they in train, like TY&E, maintenance of way, mechanical? We get that sort of information. So then we can look at, are there differences between those different job types in perceptions of safety culture? And sometimes, and like I did in the study, we compare those responses to management employees, but only if there were 5 or more managers that responded to our survey. So again, we take that confidentiality and anonymity very seriously. And that's the only information that goes back to the railroad. Anything related to demographics would be for research purposes at this point.
Excellent. We have a question too about would a female-only leadership development class be something the industry would appreciate? Would there be added benefits?
I love that idea.
Wow.
I think that would be, it all just kind of speaks to like, how can we make the industry more attractive for female workers who want to come to it, and for them to want to then stay. So if you had a women leadership sort of training class that provides like a support group for those women who are interested in assuming those roles to come together, and shows that they can have advancement within the organization, that the organization cares about gender diversity. It just does a lot of great things for telling people that the organization cares and actually supports women in the craft.
I think that's a fabulous idea. I really like it a lot. And it could be something that I would like to bring up in a SLSI discussion, because I think that could be very specific yet helpful spin-off of our typical leadership development training.
Excellent. So seeing as there's such a small representation of females in the railroad industry. I guess I'd be curious to know, how did each of you embark on your career journey within the railroad industry?
Sure, I'll start. So I graduated with my PhD in industrial and organizational psychology in May 2020, and then got hired with the Shoreline Safety Institute in June 2020. And that was my my first encounter with working with the rail industry at all, besides just going on the Long Island Railroad all the time and my own personal passenger experiences. But I saw the job posting actually through the Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology job board, and I was a member of that throughout grad school. So that is how I got even known about what Shoreline Safety Institute was, or who, the services that they offered. So it was pretty happenstance, but I'm really excited about it. And obviously I'm still working with them 3 years later, and it's been a great experience, and I look forward to the future as well. So it was a quick transition from grad school graduation straight into the rail industry. Look forward to the upcoming years.
So it was also kind of happenstance for me as well. I started grad school 6 years ago now at UConn for industrial organizational psychology. And my advisor knew that I was really interested in applied practical research. I really enjoyed consulting and providing actionable information to organizations to improve their workforce. And we had been working with the Shoreline Safety Institute for quite some time. So I got assigned as a graduate assistant, which turned into like a side sort of external consulting position. And I've always been interested in organizational climate and culture, and this was safety culture. So I was able to get my hands dirty in it, and really enjoyed it.
Perfect. Seeing as there was a difference too between the percentage of females in management positions and in craft positions, have we looked into maybe like the increased percentage in management positions? Like, where are these females coming from? Which sectors, say, are they originally from and moved up into management within rail?
That was brought up before. I think when I was presenting this poster at the Transportation Research Board, someone asked a similar question. Do we know the career path of these women before they end up in management in the rail industry and ended up in our sample set here? At this moment, we do not have that information, but I think that's extremely important. It can be really helpful for, like I said earlier, kind of pipeline recruitment efforts. Where are these women coming from before? Are they craft employees before? Are they coming from management of other industries? I think that'd be really helpful and useful information. The question then would be how to obtain it in a systematic way. But I do think that could be very valuable for many different reasons. Samantha, do you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I'll also say our data did show that women were employed in the railroad industry for fewer years than men, which makes me wonder, where are they coming from? Are they starting in the craft employees and craft sort of jobs, or are they kind of just coming out of higher education and into those management positions? And are those management positions on the floor, or are they in like upper management? So those are definitely all future research questions, so we can better understand kind of how women, if we can better understand how women are currently coming in, and we can identify where they're not coming in and maybe focus our efforts on those initiatives.
Perfect. I don't see any new questions. I do see a comment though that says, as a civil engineer, I ended up working on a railroad project in New York City for over 10 years until I was recruited by Amtrak. So I guess just goes to show we can come from all different industries before entering the railroad industry. So I'll leave maybe one more minute for questions if we have any other ones.
And the results from our poll were interesting. So we had 100% of our audience who participated say that they would feel comfortable identifying their gender in a survey. So I think that's that speaks a lot. And also, of course, our audience here is League of Railway Women, so they are very supportive of female representation in the industry. But I think it's important to understand, is it something that people are timid about, or is it something that people would actually love to voice and make sure that the only woman on the railroad is sharing her opinions on different topics in regards to safety culture? So thank you everyone for participating, and I think it's it's a broader question with a broader sample, but it's nice to see our audience on board with it.
Excellent. So maybe if we're ending our question session right now, I'll just pass into a few messages from LRW before we leave you. So just a reminder on our upcoming webinar, seeing as this is the first one in our series kicking us off for this year. So the next webinar will be on the rail industry in Mexico in 2 weeks, so Tuesday, May 9th from 1 to 2 p.m. Registration is currently open for that webinar as well. So we hope that everyone will join us for that session as well. And we have some upcoming live events as well. So May 16th, LRW Coffee Conversation at Union Station Tour and reception in Washington, D.C. And of course, we'll be participating in the Railway Interchange in Indianapolis from October 1st to 4th. And just before we end this session, I want to thank our panelists and our presenters and all of our attendees. And just to warn you that as soon as we end this session, it does abruptly cut off. So don't be surprised if it all of a sudden shuts down. But thank you again for participating, and we really hope you join us in our future webinars. Thank you.
Everyone, thank you.